Nestled in the heart of Idaho, Moscow embodies an idyllic blend of vibrant student life and a close-knit community. Renowned for its student-centric atmosphere, the city thrives around the prestigious University of Idaho, fostering an environment where academia meets a spirited collegiate lifestyle. The neighborhoods surrounding the university bustled with students residing in hostels, rented university properties, and homes just beyond the campus bounds. Despite Moscow's academic fame, occasional covert gatherings took place where students convened with friends and loved ones. Yet these gatherings were typically uneventful. However, on the chilling November 13, 2022 night, university students experienced a harrowing turn of events while unwinding after a party, disrupting the peaceful atmosphere they had anticipated. And this happened in this three-story house. The story begins with four individuals enrolled at the University of Idaho. 20-year-old Ethan Chapin, hailing from Conway, Washington. 21-year-old Kaylee Gonzaves from Rathdrum, Idaho. 20-year-old Zana Kernadal, belonging to Post Falls, Idaho. And 21-year-old Madison Moggan, originating from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Ethan was a freshman while Zana was a junior. Meanwhile, both Kaylee and Madison were seniors at the university. Ethan James Chapin, the eldest of triplets, was born at 4:43 p.m. on a picturesque Tuesday evening of October 29, 2002, at Swedish Hospital in Seattle. Maisie arrived moments later at 4:44, followed by Hunter at 4:45. Initially residing in Olympia at Summit Lake, the family spent the initial year and a half there before relocating to Conway. The children attended Conway School, receiving excellent education while actively participating in soccer, basketball, and cross-country. Ethan cherished fond moments of playing basketball alongside his brother at Conway adorned in their team jerseys. Subsequently, Ethan enrolled at Mount Vernon High School, yet his on-campus schooling or normal schooling was disrupted by the onset of the COVID pandemic. Alongside his siblings, Ethan transitioned to Idaho, working at Hills Resort before attempting to resume studies at MVHS, which remained affected. They later worked at Tulip Town during the tulip season before returning to Hills Resort in Idaho for summer employment, just before commencing their stint at the University of Idaho. In August 2021, Ethan's family embarked on a journey to the University of Idaho to drop off their three children to college. Both Ethan and Hunter joined the fraternity Sigma Chi, while Maisie became part of the Kappa Alpha Theta sorority. Since beginning his studies at the University of Idaho, Ethan embraced a vibrant social life, engaged in intramural sports, and managed his academic responsibilities. He continued his passion for sports and also developed a romantic relationship with Zana Kernadal during this time. Zana Alexia Kernadal was born on July 5, 2002 at Kootenai Health Hospital in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and grew up in Post Falls. Her early years were marked by her talent as a gymnast, showcasing her skills from a young age. Throughout her schooling at Post Falls Middle and High School, Zana actively participated in volleyball, track, and soccer until her graduation in 2020. Alongside her studies, she also worked at Texas Roadhouse. Upon enrolling at the University of Idaho, Zana pursued a major in marketing while immersing herself in extracurricular activities, notably as an engaged member of the Pi Beta Phi sorority and the Vandal Solutions sales team. Juggling these commitments, she also held a part-time position at the Mad Greek restaurant in Moscow, Idaho. Beyond her academic and professional pursuits, Zana found joy in her dog, Shoe Shine, cherished moments at EDM concerts, relished spending quality time with friends, and eagerly embarked on family trips with her sister and father. Her childhood was filled with fond memories of her grandparents' farm and summers spent by the river. Zana's vibrant personality made her deeply loved by her family, friends, and classmates. Known for her positive and outgoing nature, she had a special ability to make everyone feel included. Her zest for life, infectious humor, and unwavering enthusiasm made an indelible mark on all who had the privilege of knowing her. Now, Zana's co-occupant during her time at the University of Idaho, Madison May Mogan, was born on May 25, 2001 in Eugene, Oregon. She brought immense joy to her family and all around her from the very beginning. After spending her initial 2 years in Oregon, Madison's family relocated to the North Idaho region where her parents had their roots. Her upbringing in Idaho was nothing short of wonderful. Beginning her education at Winton Elementary, she later transitioned to Coeur d'Alene Charter Academy before ultimately choosing to enroll in LCHS, a decision she made after articulating her reasons in a decisive letter alongside her lifelong friend, who was practically her sister, Kaylee. It was evident to everyone who knew her that Maddie's endearing personality made her feel immensely loved. Her unique offbeat and humorous approach brought smile and laughter to others, and it was a well-known fact that keeping her well-fed was essential. Maddie was respected for her determination and commitment to her future endeavors, excelling in academics and every job she undertook during high school and college. She built a network of friends, colleagues, supervisors, and teachers who admired her work ethic, care, and dedication. Excited about her academic pursuit at the University of Idaho, though a little farther from home, Maddie thrived, consistently earning a spot on the dean's list each semester. Joining Pi Beta Phi, she formed enduring bonds with close friends and also cherished having Kaylee alongside. Additionally, she found love with a boy named Jake, who held a special place in her heart. Now, Maddie's best friend, Kaylee Jade Gonzalez, was born in Concord, California on June 8, 2001. Even before her arrival, she was a radiant spark for her parents, Steve and Christy Gonzalez. As the third child, Kaylee brought a unique energy with her, born with distinctive black, thick curls, a charming button nose, and a perfectly round porcelain face adorned with a mysterious tiny scar on her forehead. Teased by her siblings about her horns, she remained a spirited and cherished middle child among her 5 siblings. Around the age of 1, Kaylee and her family relocated to North Idaho, where her vibrant personality flourished. Growing into a beautiful, authentic, and social individual, she adored Claire's fashion accessories and had an innate talent for eliciting laughter from those around her. Her educational journey began at Bora Elementary alongside her older brother and sister before transitioning to Charter Academy for middle school, where she crossed paths with Maddie Mogan, making the start of an inseparable bond. From that day forward, their lives intertwined, transforming their family of 5 into a family of 6. Despite initial hesitations from her parents, Kaylee attended Lake City High School before venturing out to the University of Idaho alongside Maddie. Joining the Alpha Phi sorority, she pursued her aspirations of becoming an elementary school teacher. Throughout her academic years, Kaylee demonstrated remarkable scholastic achievements, complemented by her ability to effortlessly make friends wherever she went. Her social, quirky, and infectious personality often infused a sense of humor and a hint of mischief into her interactions. Enthusiastic about adventure and pranks, she balanced her studies with a full-time job, showcasing her diligent work ethic. During their tenure at the University of Idaho, Madison and Zana resided together in a rental home located in close proximity to the university campus. Kaylee had previously been a resident of the same house, but had recently moved out. However, on the evening of November 12, 2022, Kaylee returned to the residence to attend a nearby party. Earlier on the evening of November 12th, 2 of the 4 students, Ethan and Zana, were present at an on-campus gathering organized by the nearby Sigma Chi fraternity, which lasted from 8 to 9 p.m. Subsequently, they arrived back home, which was the rented house, at 1:45 a.m. Meanwhile, the remaining 2 individuals, close friends Maddie and Kayla, had spent their evening at the Corner Club, a downtown sports bar, arriving at 10 p.m. and departing around 1:30 a.m. By 1:56 a.m., all 4 individuals had indeed returned to the shared rental house. Moreover, the building accommodated 2 additional students who resided on the ground floor, sharing the space with them. All of them retired to bed for the night. One of the residents, Dylan Mortensen, stayed on the ground floor. Maddie and Kaylee shared a bed, while the other residents stayed on the same floor, but in a separate room adjacent to theirs, and Zana and Ethan shared Zana's bed. During the early morning hours of November 13, 2022, one of the residents, apart from the aforementioned, who was asleep on Maddie and Kaylee's floor, was awakened by sounds resembling Zana and her dog. She even sensed hearing Zana saying, "There's someone here." Meanwhile, Dylan on the ground floor, upon hearing unusual sounds, opened her room door twice to investigate. During the second instance, she discerned what appeared to be cries emanating from Zana's room, accompanied by a male voice reassuring, "It's okay. I'm going to help you." Curiosity compelled her to open the door a third time, revealing a figure draped in black attire and a mask covering their mouth and nose, advancing in her direction. The unfamiliar individual, unnoticed by Dylan, proceeded past her and utilized the sliding glass door to depart. Stricken by a state of shock, she stood frozen momentarily, eventually seeking safety by locking herself within her room. No calls to 911 were immediately made. However, at 11:58 a.m. on November 13, 2022, hours following the incident, a call was finally placed from within the residence utilizing a roommate's cell requesting aid for an unconscious individual. Upon police arrival, they discovered the home's door open with no signs of forced entry or internal damage. Nothing seemed to be missing from the premises. Both the roommates were inside when the authorities arrived. However, the police made a grisly and distressing discovery. The heartbreaking truth unfolded. Zana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee had been fatally stabbed while in their respective beds on the second and third floors of the home. The victims were found without restraints or gags, and blood spatters stained the walls at the scene. Maddie and Kaylee were located in Maddie's bedroom, while Zana and Ethan were discovered in Zana's room. However, the lingering question remained, why did the killer spare the lives of the two roommates? Homicide detective Phil Waters speculated that the assailant may not have noticed Dylan or the other girl in the darkness. However, this assumption cannot be unequivocally regarded as the absolute truth. At present, it's the closest explanation available, pending further investigation and evidence. The surviving roommates had summoned friends to the home as they were concerned about one of the victims on the second floor, believing her to be unconscious and unresponsive. Though the identity of the 911 caller was withheld, the police verified that the caller was not regarded as a suspect in the tragic incident. During the investigation, the police uncovered a live-streamed video on Twitch by the Grub Truck, a food truck located 4 blocks south at Friendship Square. The footage depicted Maddie and Kaylee at 1:41 a.m. engaged in conversation and displaying smiles. 10 minutes later, they acquired their food and departed, initially presumed to have taken an Uber ride home, covering the distance of approximately 1 mile. 7 unsuccessful phone calls were registered from Kaylee's phone to her ex-boyfriend, a fellow student between 2:26 and 2:52 a.m. Additionally, Maddie attempted to contact Kaylee's former boyfriend 3 times during a similar time frame, from 2:44 to 2:52 a.m., all resulting in an unanswered calls. These calls underwent investigation, with police ultimately concluding that they did not consider the recipient of those missed calls to be involved in the crime. Following a forensic examination of Zana's cell phone, records indicated her activity on the TikTok app at 4:12 a.m. Additionally, security cameras positioned near the residence captured audio recordings of whimpering, a notable loud thud, and repeated barking from a dog. Commencing approximately at 4:17 a.m., detectives deduced that the tragic killings took place within a window of time estimated to be between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. On the evening following the tragic events of November 13th, the university made the decision to cancel classes for November 14th. Furthermore, they arranged a candlelight vigil, initially planned to be held on the UI administration building lawn for the evening of November 16th, which was subsequently postponed for 2 weeks. Initially, investigators stated that there appeared to be no immediate risk to the community following the day of the killings. However, 3 days later, Moscow Police Chief James Fry revised the assessment stating, "We cannot definitively assert that there's no threat to the community." Fall break had been planned to commence after November 18th, with classes set to resume on November 28th. However, in response to the initial assurances provided by the police being met with skepticism and concern from many residents and other Moscow residents regarding their safety, an early Thanksgiving holiday exodus from the area began. Some individuals who chose to remain were understandably anxious and exercised caution, leading several professors to cancel their classes during this period. The fathers of Kaylee Gonzalez and Ethan Chapin expressed criticism concerning the restricted information flow from both the police and the university to the families of the victims. Additionally, a wave of speculation and misinformation about the case emerged on social media, propagated by individuals on platforms like TikTok, self-identified psychics, and various other social media users. In response to this escalating situation, the Moscow Police Department rebuked internet sleuths for their involvement in generating widespread online rumors and disrupting the ongoing investigations. In a news release issued on December 2nd, they highlighted the speculative nature of the information circulating without factual substantiation, which was fueling community anxieties and disseminating falsehoods. The Ladakh County coroner conducted autopsies on the 4 victims on November 17, 2022, revealing that all had sustained multiple stab wounds, particularly fatal ones inflicted on the chest and upper body. The nature of the wounds indicated that a large knife or very similar ones had been used in the attacks. Additionally, at least one victim displayed defensive wounds on their hands, suggesting attempts to fend off the assailant, with the possibility that others also made similar efforts. Disturbingly, the victims may have been attacked while they were asleep in their beds. However, no evidence suggests in any form of assault in the tragic deaths. The coroner unequivocally declared all 4 deaths as homicides resulting from stabbing, yet none of the victims were found tied or gagged. Despite thorough investigations, no weapon has been recovered. Authorities suspect that the perpetrator or perpetrators employed a fixed-blade knife in the commission of the crime. The surviving roommate who had cited the suspect provided a description, portraying the individual as an unfamiliar male, approximately 5 foot, 10 inches tall. The roommate noted that the suspect was not notably muscular, but possessed an athletically built physique, further emphasizing distinctively bushy eyebrows as a notable feature of the individual's appearance. On November 19, 2022, law enforcement authorities appealed to the public for any video footage captured at the residence on the night of the tragic incident. To facilitate the collection of potential evidence, a phone tip line and email address were established, encouraging students and other individuals to submit any relevant information to the authorities. During a press conference held on November 23, 2022, the Moscow police chief disclosed that authorities had received several tips, one of which suggested that Kaylee might have had a stalker. However, at that point, law enforcement officials were unable to substantiate or confirm the reliability of that claim, nor were they able to identify any individual fitting the description of the potential stalker. By December 5, 2022, the response from the public was substantial, with more than 2,600 tips submitted via email, approximately 2,700 phone calls received, and additional 1,000 digital media submissions through these designated tip lines. Subsequently, on December 24, 2022, the investigative team disclosed that they had amassed a staggering count of at least 15,000 tips pertaining to the case from various sources and members of the public. Initially, the police did not rule out the possibility of there being more than one perpetrator involved in the tragic incident. Authorities expressed their belief that the attack was potentially targeted. However, they had yet to determine definitively whether the target was the residence itself or its occupants. After receiving numerous tips from the public on December 15, 2022, the police announced their intention to scrutinize records involving approximately 22,000 fifth-generation Hyundai Elantras manufactured between 2011 and 2013. Surveillance footage from the area had captured video evidence of an Elantra present around the time of the tragic incident. Investigators observed that this vehicle had made multiple passes along the same route in close proximity to the residence. Another surveillance recording acquired by investigators depicted an Elantra passing by the victim's home 3 times, commencing around 3:29 a.m. Subsequently, at 4:04 a.m., the Elantra returned to the residence for a 4th time. Notably, at 4:20 a.m., the same car was observed speeding away from the victim's neighborhood. Some days later, the investigators finally tracked the ownership of the Elantra vehicle to a local resident, Brian Koberger, who had driven it along with his father to the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania for the holiday season. He and his father were pulled over by the police for tailgating. During their journey, Brian Koberger was pulled over again by the Indiana State Police on Interstate 70 outside Greenfield, Indiana, for infractions of speeding and tailgating. However, the FBI refuted allegations that they had directed the Indiana State Police to conduct these stops. Subsequently, when investigators dug deeper into Kohberger's whereabouts, they acquired cell phone data indicating Kohberger's phone had ceased connecting to the network around 2:47 a.m. in Pullman on November 13, 2022, before reconnecting at approximately 4:48 a.m. near Blaine, Idaho, an area near U.S. Highway 95 south of Moscow. Further cell phone data revealed that Kohberger's phone accessed a cell tower in close proximity to the victim's residence at around 9 a.m. on November 13, 2022, roughly 5 hours after the tragic incident occurred. Moreover, police obtained data indicating that his phone had pinged from the cell phone tower nearest to the residence at least 12 times between June 2022 and November 13, 2022. However, this was not all. In addition to this evidence, investigators collected a DNA sample from the crime scene that did not match the DNA of any of the victims. This DNA was discovered on a tan leather knife sheath found on Maddie's bed. Authorities utilized a public genealogy database, which led them to a partial match with an individual having a familial connection to Kohberger. Subsequently, investigators pursued this lead and successfully traced the DNA evidence to Kohberger by matching it with DNA retrieved from the trash collected at his family's residence in Pennsylvania. Investigators proceeded to surveil Kohberger outside his parents' residence in Pennsylvania. During surveillance, Kohberger was observed on multiple occasions wearing surgical gloves and placing trash bags into a neighbor's garbage can. Subsequently, the items retrieved from the trash were sent to the Idaho State Lab for further testing as part of the investigation. Authorities also noted that Kohberger had meticulously cleaned his vehicle, thoroughly addressing both the interior and exterior, ensuring that no area was overlooked or left uncleaned. On December 30, 2022, 28-year-old Brian Christopher Kohberger was apprehended, unveiling comprehensive details about his background and personal information. Brian Christopher Kohberger was born on November 21, 1994, hailed from Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. Raised in Pennsylvania with his parents Michael and Marianne and two sisters Amanda and Melissa, Kohberger's online presence was limited until his arrest. His academic pursuits primarily focused on criminality and psychology, aligning with his family's inclination towards education, especially in psychology-related fields. He graduated from Pleasant Valley High School in 2013 and attended Monroe Career and Technical Institute in Bartonsville, but dropped out a year later. Kohberger pursued an associate degree in psychology at Northampton Community College in Bethlehem, which he obtained in 2018. After his graduation, he secured a position as a security guard within the Pleasant Valley School District, where his father had previously held a maintenance role for an extended period and his mother had served as a substitute teacher for a while. While at work, Kohberger's proactive response during a colleague's medical emergency garnered local attention in Pennsylvania. However, before this, his high school years were marked by weight-related bullying. Kohberger underwent a significant weight loss, transforming his appearance and purportedly impacting his demeanor. Friends noted a noticeable shift in his behavior post-weight loss, describing instances of bullying and manipulation within his social circle. Several acquaintances asserted that Kohberger battled drug abuse, allegedly starting with marijuana, to cope with teenage harassment and escalating to a heroin addiction. He reportedly sought rehabilitation after high school, continuing his education with an associate's degree, and later pursuing higher studies at DeSales University in Center City, Pennsylvania, where he excelled academically in psychology and criminology. And finally, in 2022, he received his master's degree in criminal justice. Kohberger ventured to Washington State University for a PhD program in Pullman, Washington, aiming to achieve a career in law enforcement. However, during this time, he encountered disciplinary issues in his teaching assistant role due to behavioral problems and problematic attitudes toward women. Email correspondence between Kohberger and Professor John Snyder revealed repeated warnings about his professionalism and conduct. Ultimately, on December 19, 2022, a month after the tragic murders, Kohberger was terminated from his teaching position at WSU. On December 30, 2022, Brian Kohberger was apprehended at his parents' residence in Monroe County, Pennsylvania, by an FBI SWAT team and Pennsylvania State Police. During the arrest, officials discovered Kohberger in the kitchen, attired in a shirt and shorts, donning examination gloves, and sorting trash into individual Ziploc baggies. He faced charges of 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 felony count of burglary upon his arrest. Assigned a public defender, he remained incarcerated without bond at the Monroe County Correctional Facility in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. Kohberger's legal representatives asserted his innocence and his determination to establish his clean hands. His family issued a statement extending sympathies to the victims and emphasized the importance of presuming their son's purity. Individuals within Kohberger's social circle were stunned by the accusations against him, although some from his past were less surprised by the allegations. Kohberger then consented to extradition during his initial appearance at the county courthouse on January 3, 2023. Subsequently, on January 4th, he was transported by flight to Pullman and then driven to the Ladakh County Jail in Moscow, where he was detained without bail. A week later, on January 12, 2023, he appeared for a status conference in the same courtroom at the courthouse. On May 17, 2023, the Ladakh County District Court disclosed that Kohberger had been formally charged by a grand jury with 5 offenses, 4 counts of first-degree murder, and 1 count of felony burglary. The scheduled preliminary hearing set for June 26 was annulled following the indictment. On Monday, May 22, 2023, in Ladakh County District Court, Kohberger declined to enter a plea. As just seen, the judge, in response to this unconventional stance, proceeded to enter a not guilty plea on behalf of Kohberger, paving the way for a trial where he could potentially face the death penalty. On June 26, 2023, the Ladakh County Prosecutor's Office declared its intent to pursue the death penalty due to the statutorily aggravating circumstances associated with the first-degree murder charges against Kohberger. He remains detained at the Ladakh County Jail without bond, maintaining a plea of not guilty to all charges. The judge scheduled Kohberger's trial for October 2, 2023, accommodating requests from both Kohberger's attorney and the state. As of now, no further updates have been disclosed to the public regarding the case. However, it's speculated that prosecutors have requested to schedule Kohberger's trial for the summer of 2024. As for the question regarding Kohberger's motive for committing this heinous act, the answer remains elusive. Law enforcement authorities believe that the intended target of his attack was either Madison or Kaylee. Nevertheless, no substantial clues or evidence have been discovered thus far to confirm this statement, keeping the case still a mystery, waiting to be unraveled. California is a state that needs little introduction. With a population of almost 40 million people, many travel from far and wide to visit the Golden State. Home to glitz and glamour, golden beaches and gorgeous scenery, Silicon Valley and the Hollywood elite. But like most places, California is definitely not without a darker side. Today, we are looking at a series of appalling crimes spanning across 15 years, and only reaching a conclusion in 2021. This is the story of the Hollywood Ripper. This story covers almost 2 decades and actually begins in 1993. But sometimes you first must go forwards in order to work backwards. We'll begin today's episode in 2001 in Los Angeles, California. One person that called this place home was 22-year-old Ashley Ellerin, an up-and-coming fashion student, finding her way in the hustle and bustle of LA. She was feisty and fearless, and everybody said she was career-focused and determined to be a success. After gaining a place at the Los Angeles Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, she started taking extra classes at UCLA and got a part-time job as a dancer out in Vegas. Ashley was working long hours every single day, carving out her own path in the busy city. She was sharing a bungalow with some friends on a nice little street in an idyllic location, just a short walk away from the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Given her job and the social circle she was running in because of her fashion work, Ashley soon started catching the eye of big Hollywood stars. She briefly dated Vin Diesel and was also romantically linked to Law and Order's Jeremy Sisto, who even flew Ashley over to one of his film sets. In December 2000, she started talking to an actor whose star was rapidly rising in Hollywood, 23-year-old Ashton Kutcher. currently starring in the hit TV program That 70s Show and having just wrapped on the movie Dude, Where's My Car? He and Ashley had met through mutual friends and hit it off right away. February 21st, 2001 was the night of the Grammys, and Ashley was going to an after party at a friend's house. Ashley and Ashton spoke on the phone, and the pair made plans to hang out after the party. Ashton said he would meet her at her bungalow and they could go for dinner and drinks. Ashley spent her day catching up with her dad, who was visiting from out of town. After this, Ashley's landlord, Mark, came over to see her. It would later come out that the pair had been seeing each other on and off for a while and slept together that evening. At around 8:30 p.m., Ashton called Ashley to confirm their plans. He told her he was running behind and maybe they should just grab some drinks and pass on dinner. She said that was fine, as she was just out of the shower anyway and would slowly start getting ready. At around 10:15 p.m., Ashton called Ashley again, but her phone rang out. He headed over to her bungalow anyway. The lights were on and her car was parked outside. After knocking on the door several times and getting no answer, he peered through a gap in a side window. It looked messy inside, but Ashley had told him she was in the middle of remodeling, so the mess didn't seem too out of place. He could see some red on the floor and assumed it was a glass of wine that she had spilled. As he was later than he initially told her he would be, he thought that she was simply mad at him and had either gone out or gone to bed. With this, he left. The next morning, Ashley's roommate walked into a frightening scene. Ashley was on the floor outside her bedroom in a pool of blood. She had been stabbed 47 times, with some of the wounds being almost 6 inches deep, and her head was almost severed. Her body was already turning blue, and it was clear that she had been dead for hours. The relatively quiet community was completely stunned. Ashley's death was shocking and on everybody's minds. Her family and friends gave police all the contacts and information they could, but for somebody who was as busy and popular as Ashley, detectives had a lot of names to get through. The only neighbor that could offer them anything said they thought they heard something that sounded like shouting just after 8:30 p.m., but they put it down to a party or a gathering. They hadn't seen anyone coming or going, and apart from the noise, there was nothing else that seemed noteworthy. The police started with the man she was supposed to be seeing that night, Ashton Kutcher. He told them that he was worried, as although he had nothing to do with her death, his fingerprints were on her door handle. They asked him some routine questions and he was very quickly ruled out. He was shaken and upset about what he now realized he'd seen inside, but he simply couldn't help the police any further. Another person they wanted to talk to was Ashley's landlord, given their relationship, but he was also eliminated from the investigation. The bungalow was very secure and double-gated, and as there was no sign of a forced entry, it meant that she had opened the door to her killer, which implied she potentially knew them. One of the names her friends handed over to the officers was Mike the Furnace Man. They didn't know a lot about it, just that he was someone Ashley had complained about pestering her for a while, with some of her friends saying he was creepy, always hanging around and turning up uninvited. After several months, the Los Angeles Police Department finally landed on a name, Michael Gargiulo. As detectives started trying to locate Michael to ask him some questions about his whereabouts that night and his connection to Ashley, they received a surprising call from the Cook County Sheriff's Office in Illinois. They had recently opened up a cold case from 1993 and were looking for someone currently living in Los Angeles that might be able to help them. None other than Michael Gargiulo. The LAPD could not believe what they were hearing and knew this was no coincidence. The Illinois case that was currently being investigated was the 1993 murder of Trisha Picacho, an 18-year-old who had been stabbed nearly 50 times on the steps of her family home. On the night of Friday, August 13th, Trisha met up with some friends for dinner at a TGI's. It was one of their last nights together before they all went their separate ways to various universities. That night, she and her friends stayed together until about 1 a.m., and after dropping her friends home, Trisha drove home herself. Just a few hours later, Trisha's father, Rick, found his daughter dead on the front steps of their home as he left to walk the dog. He said the first thing he saw when he stepped outside were her little tennis shoes before he fell onto his knees, screaming. She was covered in wounds and blood, and one of her arms had been broken. She was still clutching her house key in her hand. She had fought her killer hard, and there was DNA under her fingernails. But these samples would lie dormant for many years, given the fact that forensic technology was in its infancy. Trisha's parents said that she was a dream child, a straight-A student, a debate team champion, and one of the hardest working and kindest people they knew. She was set to study engineering at Purdue University and was most definitely up for any challenges life threw her way. Nobody could believe that anyone would want to hurt her in such a brutal way, and they simply had no names and no suspects. Before long, Trisha Picacho's case went cold. Her mother Diane said that the police had told her, "Unfortunately, some cases just didn't get solved, and that's the way it was." She said, "If they thought they were going to turn up on my doorstep and tell me that I have to accept that, they knocked on the wrong door." But sadly for the family, it seemed it had just been them fighting for answers for the last 7 years until it was reopened now that forensic testing had come such a long way. The Cook County Sheriff's Office wanted samples from everybody that had been in contact with Trisha around that time. After she was found on that fateful morning, Michael Gargiulo had actually been one of the first people on the police's radar. He had admitted to driving Trisha to a friend's house 2 days before she was killed. He was also good friends with her brother Doug and a frequent face at the Picacho home. He was questioned by police in 1993, but no charges were filed. And now, almost a decade later, officers wanted to talk to him again. As soon as the murders of Ashley and Trisha were compared, the similarities in the way both women had been killed could not be overlooked. Los Angeles police now needed to find Michael even quicker, and after a few months of looking, they finally located him. The first thing they wanted was a DNA sample, but he refused, saying he had nothing to do with either case. And without a warrant, he wasn't going to hand anything over. With this, the officers had no choice but to leave. They kept tabs on Michael for a while, and when they found out he had briefly been admitted to hospital, they secretly got their DNA sample from there. After a long wait, the results finally came back. Michael Gargiulo's DNA was a positive match to the DNA found under Trisha's fingernails all those years ago. Investigators were so relieved they went straight to the attorney's office looking to seek an indictment for murder. The attorney's office, however, refused to take it any further. They said that the DNA could have been exchanged through casual contact given the fact that Michael knew Trisha and her brother from school. But according to witnesses, Trisha spent the night with many people, including her boyfriend, but the only DNA found on her was Michael's. A second blow came when the LAPD determined that they had no physical evidence tying Michael to the murder of Ashley Ellerin, and they announced that no charges would be filed there either. Detectives had been on the cusp of catching a dangerous killer, and it had slipped through their hands in an instant. But they knew that this had to be their man. They just had to go back through his history and gather as much as they could about his character, prior relationships, and previous crimes. So, who was Michael Gargiulo? And what had led to all of this? Born in 1976, Michael Thomas Gargiulo grew up in a quiet suburb of Glenview, Illinois. He was from a big family, having 7 brothers and sisters. He would tell people he suffered physical abuse at the hands of his father and of the siblings, although these claims were never corroborated. As he entered his teenage years, Michael gained a reputation as a bully with a quick and aggressive temper. He was also known to lie compulsively and exaggerate things all the time. One of his friends recalled he could go from being perfectly pleasant to almost inhuman in a split second. Michael soon started getting arrested for things like breaking into unlocked cars in his school and fighting with people. He developed a fascination with the serial killer Ted Bundy and spent countless hours deep in books about forensic science, something he soon took great pride in knowing a lot about. He told people if he ever got caught committing a crime, he would either know how to get himself out of it or he would lie until he dies. After Trisha was killed in 1993, the Picacho family started receiving gifts from Michael. A t-shirt for Rick, a restaurant voucher, and some flowers for Diane. Michael then showed up at their house asking to talk to Rick. They said it looked like he wanted to get something off his chest. He waited for him to come home for almost an hour before abruptly leaving without saying anything. Rick and Diane were so on edge after this strange encounter. They got straight on the phone and told the detectives what had happened. The police did log it, but it was never followed up on. In 1997, officers saw another chance to try and get Michael to talk about Trisha. He was charged with stealing a car, and police said if he told them what he knew about Trisha's murder, they could cut him a deal on the charges. But he still sat quiet and said nothing at all. Former girlfriends of Michael had horror stories to tell of their time with him. One said when she was 17, he handcuffed and raped her. Another one of Michael's exes said he punched her in the face so hard, she ended up with a detached retina. He threatened to kill her, saying he would be able to get away with it because of his extensive knowledge of forensics. In 1998, Michael decided he was going to go to LA to chase a dream that many share when they move there. He wanted to be an actor and a model. Michael quickly got a job as a bouncer at the Rainbow Bar and Grill on Sunset Boulevard, West Hollywood. No sooner had he been hired, he was let go for punching a customer in the face. During his brief time there, Michael made friends with two other bouncers. They said that Michael had once asked them if they'd ever killed anyone. He then admitted to murdering Trisha Picacho. Back in 1993, "I buried a bitch. I left the bitch on the steps for dead," he calmly said. With Michael's reputation as a liar, the two men assumed that this was just another one of his wild stories. In the fall of 2000, Michael met Ashley Ellerin, who at the time was living just across the street from him in Hollywood. He offered to help her change a flat tire and the pair exchanged numbers. This short encounter soon became a fatal obsession. Before long, he was trying to visit her at all hours of the day and night, sitting outside her home in his car and turning up wherever she was. Despite all of this and the DNA matches, 4 years would pass since that fateful day back in February 2001, when Ashley was found dead, and over a decade since Trisha was killed. It was now 2005 and police were still working on both cases. Although they still only had one suspect, they didn't have enough to meet the threshold of what was required to file charges. To their horror and dismay, another shocking and disturbing crime was about to take place across the city. A 32-year-old mother of 4, Maria Bruno, was starting fresh in a new apartment complex in East LA. She had recently separated from her husband, and she moved into a new place, looking forward to a new start. She told everyone she had spent a lot of time choosing the apartment and had picked it because of its security and how safe it felt for her and her young family. She had 2-year-old twins, a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old. Just 10 days after moving in on December 1st, 2005, Maria was found dead by her ex-husband Irving. She had been stabbed 17 times, her throat had been slit, and both her breasts had been cut off. The only clue left at the scene was a blue surgical shoe cover with a small amount of Maria's blood on it. Whoever her killer was, they had broken in via the kitchen window at around 1 a.m. and used one of her own knives to kill her. Experts determined the killer was left-handed. Police's first thought was that Irving might have something to do with it. They had separated on bad terms after their relationship had become more volatile. But Irving said the pair were working on getting their marriage back on track and had even been out for dinner the night before. There were a couple of drops of Maria's blood found inside his car, but he said this was easily explained. While at the restaurant table, Maria cut her finger and a few employees came to help her as well, corroborating what Irving had said. After police ruled him out, they were left with nothing. One detective said it was almost like she was killed for the sake of it and they had nothing to go on, apart from hoping there was some more DNA found on the shoe cover. But a few neighbors had their eyes on another man who was living just across the courtyard from Maria at the time. He always acted and behaved oddly, but in the days and hours leading up to her death, he was acting even more strangely than usual. They gave police a description and a sketch was drawn up. The man they were describing was Michael Gargiulo. Michael was long gone by the time the investigation got underway, and another awful crime would remain unsolved for several years. It was around this time that Trisha's parents back in Illinois finally learned that there had been a hit on the DNA sample from their daughter's case. They were appalled that it had taken them so long to learn about this and that Michael was still out there, free, facing no charges. Another 3 years would pass, taking us to 2008. In an apartment complex in Santa Monica lived 26-year-old Michelle Murphy. Late one April night, Michelle woke up to a man in her bedroom wearing a hoodie and a hat. He launched at her and started stabbing her. Michelle was petite, standing at just 5'1", and before she knew it, she was fighting for her life against someone that was completely overpowering her. She grabbed the blade with both hands, trying to get him to lose control of it. She was screaming so loudly, she knew it was a matter of time. before someone heard her. In the last-ditch attempt to get him off her, and with all of her remaining strength, she tucked her knees in towards her chest and pushed both legs out at him, causing him to fall off the bed. After this, her attacker ran out of the room saying, "I'm sorry." Michelle was left battered and bleeding on the bed, but she had survived. She called her boyfriend and he called for help. Her attacker was left-handed, and fortunately had been cut with the blade in the fight, leaving his blood in her apartment. Sure enough, when the Santa Monica Police Department ran the blood through the database, they got a match, and it went right back to the DNA that was found under Trisha Picacho's nails. And they also realized it matched DNA that was found along the elastic part of the blue surgical shoe cover outside Maria Bruno's apartment. Michael Gargiulo's despicable acts weren't stopping or slowing down. Far from it. And finally, with this, after 15 years, his horrific crime spree would come to an end. In June 2008, he was placed under arrest for the attempted murder of Michelle Murphy and held on a $1.1 million bail. A search of his car uncovered many items of evidentiary value, including some blue surgical shoe covers. 3 months later, Michael was also charged with the murders of both Ashley Ellerin and Maria Bruno. However, it would take until 2011 for Michael to be charged with the murder of Trisha Picacho too. Because Trisha's case had happened in Illinois and Ashley, Maria, and Michelle were all in California, it meant that Michael would have to have 2 separate trials in both states. Michael Gargiulo pleaded not guilty to all charges, and after many pushbacks due to him hiring and firing lawyers and some attempted escapes from prison, in May 2019, his California trial finally got underway. By this point, it had taken Michael longer to go to trial than any other inmates in the history of the LA County Jail. His defense team said he had suffered mental health issues and was unable to recall attacking Michelle, and it was up to a jury to decide if he was sane at the time or not. This would obviously result in a very different possible sentence, so this decision was not made lightly. A jury found Michael Gargiulo sane, and this paved the way for prosecutors to seek the death penalty if he was found guilty. 36,000 pages of evidence had been gathered and hundreds of witnesses were called to testify, 2 of which were Michelle Murphy and Ashton Kutcher. The prosecution painted a damning picture of Michael Gargiulo. They laid out his patterns of behavior, his past relationships, the fact he was left-handed, the DNA evidence, and where he lived in relation to all the women. The jury then left the courtroom to go and see the apartment buildings and get a clearer idea of just how close Michael was to them, and how easy it would have been for him to see into their homes and keep tabs on them. Michael's defense team, however, raised the fact that no evidence had actually been found in Ashley's home. There was no DNA, no witnesses. It was purely circumstantial evidence, which they argued threw into question the entire trial. Ashley Ellerin's landlord, Mark, then became the defense's focus, and they argued it was entirely possible. After they had slept together that evening, he had killed her. They said this was further corroborated by the fact that when Ashton called her, she told him she was just getting out of the shower, and Mark had already admitted to being there at that time. They said given how she was found, how soon after she got out of the shower she was killed, and the fact that just after 8:30 a neighbor heard something, it put Mark right there at the time, and he was most definitely not in the clear. They also said that the DNA found near Maria Bruno's home was probably because Michael was a repairman at the time. He could have worn a pair of these during a job on the complex and innocently become caught up in the investigation. His lawyer pointed towards her estranged ex-husband and their toxic marriage. The prosecution, however, said that this was nothing more than a desperate attempt to point the finger at innocent people that had already been cleared by police many years ago. Given Michael's obsession with Ashley Ellerin, he was likely watching her bungalow all evening. When he saw Mark leave, he spotted his opportunity and ran over, taking him just seconds. Ashley could have opened the door straight away, thinking it was Mark coming back to get something, and, as it was just a matter of minutes later, she would still be in her robe from the shower. They said the same could be applied to Maria Bruno, and the DNA evidence was clear, as it was in the case of Michelle Murphy. The trial was a grueling one for everybody. Even reporters who were seasoned in these type of cases and knew them pretty well often had to turn their heads away because the evidence was so graphic and gruesome. As everything came to an end, it was now up to the jury. Despite the defense's arguments, Michael Gargiulo was found guilty on all charges, and in late 2019, The jury unanimously reached the conclusion that he should be sentenced to death, believing no other sentence was appropriate. Their recommendation was heard and agreed upon. And in 2021, 45-year-old Michael Gargiulo was sentenced to death for the murders of Ashley Ellerin and Maria Bruno. He is unlikely to be put to death anytime soon, however, as the state of California has not executed anyone since 2006. And Governor Gavin Newsom halted executions for as long as he is in office. But courts have been working on the assumption that executions may one day resume. Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Larry Paul Feidler said, "This case, everywhere that Mr. Gargiulo went, death and destruction followed. Ashley's parents, Maria's ex-husband Irving, and Trisha's family, among others, all gave powerful victims impact statements. All Michael Gargiulo had to say was, 'I'm going to death row wrongfully. I've been framed by tunnel vision detectives.' Michael will now face extradition to begin trial for Trisha's murder, but this date has not yet been confirmed. Officers from all forces that dealt with this believe that unfortunately there will be more victims out there. During one of Michael's police interviews, he gave several partial confessions alluding to killing at least 10 women, but he refuses to give any further details. The police continue to follow up on leads and tips and hope that a fuller picture will be painted over time and more closure can be found in doing so. They also admit that there were many failings within the investigations and how things were handled. "I can't put a happy face on this because we dropped the ball. No ifs, ands, or buts about it," said one of the detectives. When asked about the fact that Cook County prosecutors refused to seek an indictment for Trisha's murder sooner, another detective said, "I'm not privy to everything they have, but I gotta say, if I'd had evidence like that, you'd bet that the LA District Attorney's Office would have had a filing, and these other girls wouldn't be dead. Plain and simple, they wouldn't be dead. For the family and friends that Trisha, Ashley, and Maria left behind, the brutal way in which they were killed will forever haunt them. Vibrant, determined young women, all in exciting new places, their lives so cruelly snatched away in such a frightening way." Trisha's father Rick said, "People talk about closure, but there is no closure. That void is always there." And for Michael's former partners who were subjected to such torment, and Michelle who almost died at his hands, their lives are forever changed as well. Michelle said she dreads going to sleep every night and is equally terrified to wake up. The devastation caused to so many people over those 15 years is unimaginable and unfathomable. It is safe to assume that Michael's crimes would have continued had it not been for his capture. The lengths he had already gone to prove he had no limits and knew no bounds. And it is terrifying to think about what could have happened next and to potentially so many more people. On September 24, 2021, the tantrums of 3-year-old Arlie Doe took a dark turn when she was put through an exorcism by her family. Her wailing and screaming was heard only within the walls of a small Pentecostal church, Iglesia Apostles y Profetas in San Jose, California. Arlie Doe took her last breath during a terrifying exorcism attempt to cast out a demon, orchestrated by her own mother, Claudia Hernandez Santos, Uncle Rene Aaron Hernandez Santos, and grandfather Rene Trigueros Hernandez. As prosecutors delve into this heart-wrenching case, they reveal the harrowing details of a fatal church exorcism that shook the community. Now, with the accusation firmly pointing at all 3 family members, the legal proceedings aim to bring justice for little Arlie. The investigators' painstaking efforts over several months unraveled the roles of each family member, mother, uncle, and grandfather, equally contributing to the tragedy that claimed the life of this innocent child. She didn't get to live because of the very family that should have protected her. Did Arlie Doe receive the justice that she deserves? Let's find out. San Jose, California is special for its museums, gardens, and historic architecture. It stands tall at the heart of California. As of the population census of 2023, San Jose is home to 930,862 people from different walks of life. Over the past 5 years, the crime rate has gone up by several folds. Despite being known as one of the safest big cities in America, the crime rate per 100,000 people is currently higher than the average rate of 316.3. However, this was an isolated incident. In the name of religion, a young soul had to depart so soon. Nestled within its quiet streets, the Iglesia Apostolici Prophetess, a seemingly ordinary and small Pentecostal church, became the epicenter of a chilling crime that unfolded in September 2021. Inside the confines of this unassuming church, a harrowing exorcism took place, forever staining its walls with the dark echoes of 3-year-old Arlie Doe's tragic demise. The Hernandez family members included 25-year-old Claudia Alicia Hernandez, the mother of the victim, 3-year-old Arlie Doe. Alongside Claudia, the family circle extends to Arlie's uncle, Rene Hernandez Santos, and grandfather, Rene Hernandez Sr., both implicated in the horrifying exorcism that led to the child's untimely demise. Not much is known about the victim's uncle or father. The family's spiritual journey unfolded within the confines of Iglesia Apostles y Prophetas, a small Pentecostal church where Arlie's grandfather, identified as the leader of the church and a certified pastor, played a prominent role. This one is very difficult to stomach. The victim in this case was particularly vulnerable. She was a 3-year-old girl, and these were people that she trusts. It was her mother, her uncle, and her grandfather. The family's occupations beyond their religious roles remain undisclosed. Claudia, the mother, handled a YouTube channel where she shared her live videos. But one fact that was certain was that they were extremely religious. It was their religious affiliations that led them to the tragic belief that the child was possessed that resulted in such an end. On September 24, 2021, a dark chapter unfolded in the life of this 3-year-old child as her family's misguided attempt to exorcise what they believed to be an evil spirit led to a day of unimaginable horror. The events that transpired on this fateful day would later become the focal point of legal proceedings and public scrutiny. It all started when Arlie woke the night before and began screaming periodically. Arlie's mother, Claudia Alicia Hernandez Santos, believed that the tantrum of her child was the work of evil forces and took her to the church to perform an exorcism. Claudia, in an attempt to perform an exorcism, put her finger down Arlie's throat several times. Even though Arlie was being subjected to so much pain, she fell asleep several times in between out of exhaustion. She was being held down by her uncle and grandfather. They held her by the neck, resulting in asphyxiation. According to Claudia, Arlie's vomit was purple in color. The 2-hour-long ceremony ended in tragedy. However, the family didn't attempt to seek any medical help for almost 2 hours after she had passed away. After almost 2 hours, Claudia called the police shortly after 8 p.m. to report her daughter's lifeless state. Responding to the call, the authorities arrived at the Iglesia Apostolici Prophetas Church in San Jose, a place that would forever be etched in infamy. There, they discovered little Arlie, unconscious on the floor, initiating a harrowing sequence of events that unfolded over the next few hours. Arlie was subjected to relentless physical abuse, lost consciousness, and displayed signs of trauma with injuries around her eyes, face, neck, and chest. The family's disturbing belief in demonic possession led to a prolonged ordeal for the young girl, lasting approximately 12 hours. When paramedics finally arrived 2 hours later, they found her lifeless body on the church floor, marking the end of a day filled with torment and anguish. The affidavit filed in Santa Clara County Superior Court revealed that Arlie's mother Claudia believed her daughter had died between 6 and 6:30 p.m. The family's distorted perception of spirituality and the misguided belief in their ability to expel evil through abusive practices cast a dark shadow over Arlie's final moments. The investigation into the tragic death of Arlie unfolded as a chilling tale of religious fervor gone awa, leading to a horrific exorcism performed by her own family members, her mother, uncle, and grandfather. The subsequent legal proceedings shed light on the shocking details of the whole 12-hour ordeal that culminated in Arlie's death inside the confines of the small Pentecostal church Iglesia Apostolici Prophetas, located in San Jose, California. The investigative process took a significant turn when Santa Clara County District Attorney Jeffrey Rosen filed court documents seeking to consolidate the cases of all 3 family members into a single trial. The rationale behind this request was rooted in the assertion that each defendant played a reprehensible role in the violence inflicted upon Arlie, making it challenging to determine individual responsibility for specific injuries. The court documents revealed the disturbing timeline of events that unfolded on September 24, 2021. Arlie's mother, 25-year-old Claudia Hernandez Santos, initiated the tragic sequence of events by calling the police to report her daughter's lifeless state. The authorities arrived at the Pentecostal church, discovering Arlie unconscious on the floor, a scene that would later be confirmed as the result of a homicide caused by suffocation and smothering. The investigation uncovered harrowing details of the family's collective actions during the 12-hour exorcism attempt. Prosecutors contended that all three defendants, Arlie's mother, uncle, and grandfather, actively participated in physically abusing the young girl. At various points during the ordeal, each family member held Arlie at different parts of her body, with one gripping her neck, another her abdomen, and the third holding her legs. The alleged attempt to induce vomiting involved a disturbing collaboration of efforts. A preliminary autopsy later confirmed that Arlie's death was a result of homicide, with asphyxia due to suffocation identified as the cause. The alarming details emerged as investigators delved into the disturbing circumstances surrounding the little girl's demise. According to court documents, the family, gripped by the belief that Arlie was possessed by a demon, engaged in a twisted form of prayer and exorcism at the church. Arlie's mother, in an attempt to rid her daughter of the perceived evil spirit, resorted to distressing methods. She allegedly attempted to induce vomiting by sticking her fingers down Arlie's throat and squeezing her neck, actions that escalated as the day went on. The investigation revealed a disturbing lack of care for Arlie's basic needs leading up to her death. The affidavit stated that the victim last ate on Thursday, September 23rd around 9 p.m. and was provided with only about 6 ounces of water from Thursday until the time of her death. The coroner's findings further emphasized the extent of Arlie's suffering, revealing injuries to her face and neck, as well as blunt force injuries across her chest and back. Internal bleeding added another layer of brutality to the acts committed by her own family member. As the investigation unfolded, the family members faced charges of child abuse, including assault on a child with force likely to cause great bodily injury resulting in death. The legal proceedings brought attention to the distorted beliefs that fueled the family's actions, the misguided conviction that Arlie was possessed by a demon and that a religious ritual could expel this perceived evil. The court documents delved into individual statements made by each defendant during police interviews. Arlie's grandfather, the self-proclaimed pastor of Iglesia Apostles y Profetas, provided varying accounts of the events leading to the young girl's death. His changing narratives between September and May raised suspicions about the accuracy of his statements and hinted at potential inconsistencies or attempts to obfuscate the truth. Similarly, Arlie's uncle, Rene Aaron Hernandez Santos, significantly altered his initial account during subsequent interviews with the police. The evolving nature of his statements suggested a lack of transparency and prompted further scrutiny of the circumstances surrounding the exorcism. If convicted, Claudia Alicia Hernandez faces an exceptionally severe sentence of 25 years to life in prison. The investigation unfolded against the backdrop of a disturbing trend. Increased demand for exorcisms, driven by a confluence of factors such as poverty, anxiety, and a lack of trust in conventional institutions. The tragic case of Arlie Doe served as a stark reminder of the dangers inherent in the intersection of religious fervor and unchecked beliefs. As the legal proceedings progressed, the call for a consolidated trial underscored the complexity of assigning individual culpability for a crime committed collaboratively. The families and actions, as revealed through the investigation, provide a chilling insight into their perspective on the events surrounding the young girl's death. The family's narrative begins with Arlie's mother, Claudia Hernandez Santos, expressing her belief that her daughter was possessed by an evil spirit. According to statements provided to police, Arlie would periodically wake up at night crying or screaming, which fueled the family's conviction that she was under the influence of a demonic force. In response to these perceived manifestations, Claudia attempted to perform what she described as an exorcism to rid Arlie of the alleged evil spirit. Claudia's involvement in the exorcism took a disturbing turn as she detailed the methods she employed in a rather matter-of-fact manner. First responders who arrived at the scene observed bruising around the child's eyes, neck, and chest. Claudia admitted that they waited for 2 hours before finally calling 911. Subsequent interviews with investigators revealed Claudia's evolving beliefs about Arlie's possession. Claudia and her uncle reportedly prayed for Arlie while inside a bedroom. The events escalated the following morning when Claudia and her uncle drove Arlie to the Iglesia Apostolis Prophetus, a small Pentecostal church. The family still held the belief that Arlie was under demonic control. The family believed she had died between 6 and 6:30 p.m., around 12 hours after arriving at the church. According to Arlie's father, they had to perform the ceremony to liberate her of her evil spirits. The details about the exorcism weren't revealed, however. It was stated that Arlie was asleep when they reached the church. He also added, "If you read the Bible, you'll see that Jesus cast away demons and made sick people healthy again," he told the newspaper. "It's not when I want to do it. It's when God, in His will, wants to heal the person. The preacher is like an instrument of God. What we do is what God says." In the aftermath of Arlie's death, Claudia set up a GoFundMe campaign to solicit donations for burial expenses. The family's deep-rooted religious convictions were evident in Claudia's Instagram profile description, which included a reference to Isaiah chapter 55, verse 8 through 11, a Bible verse about finding strength during difficult times. Arlie's mother added another layer to the investigation through YouTube videos she uploaded, providing insights into her perspective on her daughter's death. In these videos, Claudia did not accept blame for the alleged exorcism or her daughter's demise. Instead, she attributed Arlie's death to a divine act, asserting that God took her and expressing gratitude that her daughter would not have to face the hardships of the world. In a bizarre turn of events, a YouTube video surfaced in January, for months after Arlie's passing, featuring Claudia Hernandez discussing her daughter's death. The 40-minute self-shot video, titled with Arlie's full name, offers a haunting glimpse into Hernandez's demeanor as she addresses the circumstances surrounding the tragedy. Hernandez's statements in the video attempt to provide her perspective on the situation, asserting that only those present truly understand what transpired. She acknowledges the negative perceptions surrounding her and the circumstances of her daughter's death, but emphasizes her inability to change the past. Hernandez expresses gratitude that her daughter is no longer suffering in a world she perceives as increasingly challenging and deteriorating. As a matter of fact, the video becomes a poignant exploration of Hernandez's emotions, revealing the pain of losing a child juxtaposed with moments of apparent detachment. She reflects on the joy of being a mother, acknowledging the sadness, tears, and longing for her daughter. The complex emotional landscape painted in the video adds another layer of intricacy to an already deeply tragic narrative. 6 days after the YouTube video was uploaded, prosecutors formally charged Hernandez. The gravity of these charges, coupled with the perceived disconnect between Hernandez's demeanor in the video and the alleged actions leading to Arlie's death, underscores the complexity of the case. The family's association with Iglesia Apostles y Prophetus took a darker turn as the church was linked to another incident, an alleged kidnapping involving individuals associated with the church. Professor Allison Cavey, an expert in the history of magic, science, and religion, provided valuable insights into the broader context of exorcisms. She highlighted the increasing prevalence of exorcisms in both the United States and Latin America over the last 5 to 7 years. Cavey pointed out challenges stemming from the Catholic Church's lack of preparation for priests to perform exorcisms, leading to a demand that is not met by qualified individuals. She also identified societal factors such as poverty, anxiety, and a lack of trust in conventional institutions for education as driving forces behind the demand for exorcisms. Cavey emphasized that when people choose supernatural explanations, like demonic possession, it often stems from dissatisfaction with natural explanations, providing comfort without the burden of blame or responsibility. In the case of Arlie's family, the tragic events unfolded against the backdrop of a desperate attempt to solve a problem they may not have fully understood, attributing it to supernatural forces. It's alarming how the family didn't express any form of guilt or sorrow even after Arlie's loss. The YouTube video recorded by Claudia before her arrest offered a glimpse into her emotional journey, from the excitement of pregnancy to the profound grief of losing her daughter. Her sentiments reflected the difficulty of accepting a child's loss due to illness, pushing individuals to seek solace in supernatural explanations. As the legal proceedings unfolded, Claudia Alicia Hernandez Santos faced charges of felony, assault on a child with force likely to produce great bodily injury resulting in death. Her arrest, which occurred on January 31, 2022, highlighted the severity of the crimes committed during that fateful exorcism. The day of horror marked by religious fervor gone awry not only claimed the life of a young child, but also brought to light the dangerous intersection of misguided beliefs and heinous actions. The tragic case of Arlie Doe came to an end when her mother, Claudia Alicia Hernandez, was charged with felony assault on a child with force likely to produce great bodily injury. The severity of the allegations prompted prosecutors to emphasize the extreme nature of the actions she's accused of committing against her own daughter. The decision to deny bail was motivated by concerns over public safety and the assessment that Hernandez presented a high flight risk. Prosecutors pointed out her minimal ties to the community coupled with her birthplace in El Salvador as factors contributing to the perceived risk. This precautionary measure underscores the severity of the accusations against Hernandez and the potential dangers she may pose if released pending trial. The disturbing details of the case were brought to public attention through newly uncovered court documents, as neither the San Jose Police Department nor the District Attorney's Office had initially disclosed information about the harrowing homicide. The investigative process aimed to unravel the circumstances surrounding Arlie's death, with Hernandez emerging as the sole individual arrested in connection to the case. The legal proceedings will continue to unfold, scrutinizing the evidence, witness testimonies, and the chilling details revealed in the court documents. Anyways, as the justice system navigates the intricacies of this case, the focus will remain on seeking accountability for the actions that led to the tragic loss of Arlie's life. The proceedings will unfold with a commitment to ensuring justice for the young victim and holding those responsible accountable for the alleged heinous acts that cut short a promising and innocent life. As we wrap up our investigation into the disturbing incidents surrounding Iglesia Apostolici Prophetis in San Jose, the web of tragedy and criminality continues to unravel. The revelations of a deadly exorcism and a shocking baby kidnapping have cast a dark shadow over this church community. July 2, 1995 marks the day when New Delhi, the bustling capital city of India, became a stage for a horror that would haunt the country for ages. Within this vibrant city, a love story took a sinister turn. Tandoor, a clay urn-shaped oven meant for creating culinary delights, became the ominous centerpiece in a gruesome crime. Instead of cooking chicken, a husband would grill his own wife at 500 degrees, and to make it even more gruesome, he applied butter to turn her into ashes. This is India's most infamous true crime story, which unfolded between the prominent areas of Kanak Place and Carol Bagh, situated in New Delhi. The region around Ashoka Road and Janpath Road near Carol Bagh in New Delhi is a bustling neighborhood characterized by its blend of residential serenity and commercial vigor. Known for its diverse community and lively atmosphere, this place offers diverse cultures, traditions, and modern conveniences. Ashoka Road leads directly to the majestic India Gate, while the Janpath area is known for hosting local cuisines and bustling markets. The area boasts a mix of residential complexes, local markets, and small businesses that cater to the daily needs of its residents. It mostly thrives with the presence of various eateries serving delectable local cuisine, adding a flavorful essence to the neighborhood. And one such famous place was Bhajia Barbecue Restaurant in Hotel Ashok Yatri Niwas, which later became the Hotel Indraprastha. However, this renowned restaurant was soon to become the center stage for a chilling incident that would later be recognized as the Tandoor Kund or the Tandoor case. Around 11:25 p.m. on July 2, 1995, Ashoka Road in Janpath, New Delhi was getting quieter. Two policemen, Constable Abdul Nazir Kunju and Home Guard Chandler Paul, were patrolling the area. As they got closer to the Ashok Yatri Niwas Hotel, Kunju noticed flames coming from some nearby buildings. Concerned about a potential fire outbreak, the duo swiftly embarked on an investigation. Kunju made his way towards the main entry gate of Yatri Niwas, making a beeline for the front of the Bhajia Barbecue Restaurant situated on the left, just inside the hotel's main entryway. From this vantage point, he observed flames emanating from the rear kitchen area of Bhajia. As he approached, a uniformed security guard intercepted him, already briefed about the situation. The guard explained that the fire originated from ignited waste paper and cardboard near the outdoor tandoor, reassuring Kunju that everything was under control and there was no cause for alarm. Satisfied with the explanation, policeman Kunju and Chanderpal proceeded to walk away towards John Patha Lane. As they began to move, Inara Devi, a middle-aged vegetable vendor often seen showcasing her produce beside the Mother Dairy Milk booth at the lane's entrance from Ashaka Road, hurriedly approached them. With her voice trembling in fear, Inaru exclaimed about the hotel being on fire. Her panicked outcry had attracted the attention of several men nearby, who also began to raise the alarm. Kunju realized how serious the situation had become upon seeing the size of the fire. The flames were already clearly visible from the lane, showing that it was more than just a small fire with thick smoke soaring high, reaching to about 30 to 35 feet above Bejia's outer wall on John Path Lane. Kunju and Chander hurried back to the closed restaurant's entrance. By that time, Kunju started quietly cursing as he expressed his frustration, mentioning that those involved were attempting to burn the entire hotel down. Kunju then moved beyond the hotel entrance and approached the canvas screen situated in front of the Bejia barbecue. Upon lifting the screen and gazing into the dimly lit restaurant, he encountered a slender man, approximately in his late 20s or early 30s, standing about 5 foot 10 inches tall and attired in a white kurta, a traditional Indian garment. This man casually informed Kunju that they were just burning some old posters and reassured him that the fire was under control. He mentioned that they had taken adequate precautionary measures and there was no reason to worry. Despite the man's reassurance, Constable Kunju remained unconvinced. He left Chanderpal near the hotel and quickly made his way to a nearby phone booth, only to find it closed. He then jogged towards the police picket situated at the rear of the Western Court complex, located a couple of 100 meters away. Once there, he urgently relayed a wireless report of the fire to the Conant Place police station, and made calls to the police control room and the fire brigade requesting immediate assistance. Upon his return to the hotel, Kunju was dismayed to witness that the blaze had escalated during his absence, with thick smoke rising high above the hotel complex. With Chander accompanying him, they marched towards the entrance of the restaurant and assertively demanded entry to inspect the fire. Once more, the men at the restaurant refused to allow him entry. Determined, Kunju wouldn't be discouraged this time. Pretending to retreat from the Bagya, he and Chanderpal exchanged secretive words as they walked away together from the front of the hotel. Rushing down John Path Lane, they swiftly scaled the 7-foot-high wall at the restaurant's rear without hesitation. Clearing the bamboo screen fencing, Kunju managed to enter the covered rear area of the garden restaurant. Without delay, they headed straight for the fire. The fire presented an alarming and disproportionate scene within the kitchen. Fueled by a heap of wooden logs, planks, and assorted materials piled atop the tandoor, it blazed with ferocity. One slender man, the same individual who had earlier dismissed Kunju at the front of the Bagya, was actively fueling the flames using wooden beams and bamboo poles. Another man dressed in a blue-printed shirt and a muscular young man stood nearby. At a distance, adjacent to the canvas screen by the hotel's entrance, stood a robustly built man wearing white. Curiously, these individuals appeared entirely indifferent to the foul smell emanating from the inferno. Kunju warned the man stoking the flames, cautioning him about the potential risk of causing a fire that could engulf the entire hotel. Upon being informed by the individual tending to the fire about his affiliation as a Congress Party worker engaged in burning old materials, including posters and waste paper, Kunju remained composed. Instead of being deterred by the political association, he immediately looked around for a bucket. This marked a moment where the young constable truly showcased his determination. Some individuals might have hesitated upon hearing about the political connection, particularly with the influential Congress Party. They might have offered a mild caution about fire safety before ultimately withdrawing. However, Kunju stood firm. He was alarmed by the considerable blaze before him and, alongside Chanderpal, swiftly gathered any available buckets and containers. They filled these from a nearby kitchen tap and promptly began extinguishing the flames. Soon, Sub-Inspector Rajesh Kumar arrived at the scene just as Kunju and Chanderpal were diligently working to suppress the fire. Interestingly, unlike the attempt to dismiss a constable earlier, no one dared to send a sub-inspector away. Accompanied by 2 security guards from the main hotel, Rajesh and his constables entered the restaurant and joined Kunju in combating the blaze. Working together, they successfully extinguished the fire within a matter of minutes. The intense flames had ignited certain plastic-coated overhead cables, causing further damage. Carrying along the person seemingly responsible for the mischief, Kunju, Sub-Inspector Rajesh Kumar, and the hotel guards proceeded to investigate the extent of the cable damage. Their objective was to determine whether the fire had spread to the building's first floor. They advanced towards the main lobby of Yatri Niwas, which led to the Coconut Grove restaurant. Ascending 2 flights of stairs, they reached the lower split-level first-floor terrace, overlooking the Bajia complex. Constable Kunju leaned over the edge of the mezzanine roof in search of the wires that had caught fire. Instead, he was met with a rush of hot air and foul-smelling folk billowing upwards. To his surprise, he noticed that the fire above the tandoor, which they had previously extinguished, had reignited. The man he had observed earlier in the Bajia, the sturdy individual clad in white, was once again fueling the flames. Kunju's initial alarm transformed into exasperation at the careless disregard for safety displayed by these people. Hurrying to the rear edge of the roof without considering the steep drop below, he leapt down, landing forcefully on the paved rear courtyard of the restaurant. Swiftly advancing towards the fire, he pushed aside the wicket fence obstructing his way and approached the tandoor from the rear. Upon reaching the kitchen area, Kunju discovered that the man in the kurta pajama and his 2 companions had vanished. Yet the fire continued to rage. It was at this moment that Kunju noticed a peculiar scent. Amidst the pungent and unpleasant odor, a distinct smell of roasted meat filled the air. However, this scent was not of ordinary food cook. Rather, it carried the unmistakable and haunting odor of burning flesh. When he examined the oven, instead of finding chicken meat being prepared, they came across something profoundly disturbing. The oven contained a human body, dismembered and partially burnt. This unsettling discovery reverberated throughout the city, leaving its residents deeply disturbed and shocked. Now 2 key questions surfaced. Who might the body have belonged to, and who could have been responsible for this gruesome deed? And so began the quest for information regarding the disturbing tandoor kund. The dismembered and burned body parts underwent testing, and upon receiving the results, the victim's identity was unveiled. She was 29-year-old Naina Sahini. Naina, a Congress worker in New Delhi, was married to 34-year-old Sushil Sharma, who was also a youth Congress leader. The initial postmortem, conducted at Lady Harding Medical College in Delhi, concluded that the cause of death was burn injuries. Subsequently, a second postmortem was ordered by the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. This examination was carried out by a team of 3 doctors from different hospitals, led by T. Dogra. During this examination, 2 bullets were discovered in the head and neck region, leading the conclusion that the cause of death was due to firearm injuries. Now, as per protocol, the police intended to meet with Sushil Sharma, but he was nowhere to be located. However, the same fate did not befall the man who was involved in burning the remains at the hotel. The individual responsible for burning the remains was apprehended and identified as Kishiv Kumar, the restaurant manager of the Bajia Hotel. It didn't take long for him to disclose the identity of the other person involved, who indeed turned out to be Naina's husband, Sushil Kumar. The case seemed close to resolution almost immediately upon the initial disclosures. Yet the grim and sinister nature of this case cast a long shadow over the city, leaving a haunting impact for a prolonged period. A few days later, on July 10, 1995, Sushil Sharma surrendered. Now all that remained was to uncover the events that transpired on the day Naina was killed and ensure that justice was served. During the interrogation, it was disclosed that Sushil and his wife, Naina, had a friend named Matlaub Karim. Matlaub and Naina had been classmates and were colleagues in the Congress Party, sharing a close bond. However, Sushil disapproved of Naina's friendship with Matlaub. Arguments frequently arose between the couple over this issue, but his possessiveness took a much darker turn on the night of July 2nd, 1995. On that tragic night, upon returning home, Sushil encountered Naina conversing on the phone while consuming alcohol. As Naina noticed Sushil's presence, she ended the call abruptly. In a fit of anger, Sushil redialed the phone and discovered Matlaub on the other end of the line. Enraged beyond control and despite Naina's attempts to explain, Sushil fatally shot her. Subsequently, he wrapped the body in a plastic bag, placed it in the trunk of his Maruti 800 car, and proceeded to transport it to the Bajia barbecue restaurant and conspired with the restaurant manager, Keshav Kumar, to dispose of it. Naina's body was dismembered and then incinerated in a tandoor oven. With this information gathered, along with a few DNA tests to confirm the killer's identity, Sushil Sharma was soon to face the legal proceedings in court. The Delhi police conducted an investigation into the case and submitted a charge sheet on July 27, 1995 in a sessions court. Subsequently, on November 7, 2003, Sushil Sharma was sentenced to death while the restaurant manager, Keshav Kumar, received 7 years of rigorous imprisonment. Sushil appealed against the district court's verdict in the Delhi High Court, yet the High Court upheld the decisions made by the lower courts. His death sentence was subsequently confirmed by the Delhi High Court in 2007. However, in 2013, the Supreme Court commuted his death sentence, citing the absence of evidence that Sushil had dismembered his wife's body. On October 8, 2013, a 3-judge bench consisting of Chief Justice Setha Sivam and Justices Ranjana Desai and Ranjan Gogoi upheld Sharma's conviction. The court reduced his death sentence to life imprisonment, due to Sushil's lack of a prior criminal record and the nature of the crime. Although both the trial court and the High Court had ordered Sushil Sharma's execution, the Supreme Court modified the sentence stating, "It is not a crime against society, but a crime committed due to his strained relationship with his wife." On December 21, 2018, the Delhi High Court issued an order for the immediate release of Sushil Sharma. The court questioned whether a person could be detained indefinitely for a murder offense even after completing a designated sentence. However, by that time, Sushil had already been released after serving 23 years in jail. According to Sushil, if he hadn't committed the crime, he believed he could have potentially become a union minister. After his release from jail, Sushil appeared to have changed as a person. Yet one cannot really know the truth that lurks beneath the superficial demeanor. When questioned about the dismemberment of Naina's body after the murder and the events of that night, here's what Sushil had to say. Regarding his future plans, despite once being a full-fledged politician, he stated that he would not pursue his career in that direction anymore and instead had different ideas in mind. On the other hand, the hero who made justice possible, policeman Kunju's life, had taken a turn. Kunju, speaking to Times of India, mentioned that he had received only 5 rupees as his reward for his brave actions. Despite making headlines in various media outlets, he now sees the incident as a brief moment of attention. Kunju claimed that the Delhi police did not acknowledge or value his policing abilities, quick response, and vigilance. He opted for voluntary retirement in 2012 and relocated to Kerala to care for his unwell mother. The 51-year-old retired officer shared that while he received an out-of-turn promotion, he was deprived of all the accompanying benefits associated with it. He mentioned being denied a salary increase under the 6th Pay Commission, highlighting that even lower-ranked constables who joined after him were earning more. Despite holding the position of head constable, Kunju stated that his requests were consistently rejected. On the night of the discovery, Kunju discovered a blood-stained plastic bag nearby containing the remaining parts of Naina's body and was threatened by Sushil and Keshav Kumar. Despite this threat, Kunju remained steadfast and fulfilled his duties, including attending court proceedings even after his retirement. His story shows that sometimes even the just are treated poorly when they go against those in power. October 19, 2021, Evansville, Indiana. Just before 11 p.m., a frantic woman flagged down an Indiana State Police trooper with a frightening story to tell. Her name was Cynthia, and she was hysterical, having just escaped from a house. She said that police needed to go straight over to Evansville's west side. 1801 Stinson Avenue. Cynthia had been called to the house by one of her friends, Heidi, asking for her to help clean up as they were waiting on a landlord's inspection. They ordered a pizza and cleaned a couple of the downstairs rooms before a noise could be heard coming from one of the upstairs bedrooms. Cynthia then noticed some blood on Heidi's shoes and a concealed gun that was in her possession. A few minutes later, she heard a very loud and very definite cry for help. Not sure what was going on, Cynthia tentatively sat down on what she thought was a pile of laundry. But as soon as she sat down, she felt something underneath. Slowly peeling back the blankets, she realized it wasn't a something. It was a someone, and they were very clearly dead. She ran straight for the door, but in that moment, Heidi's boyfriend appeared and instantly tried to stop her from leaving. She pushed past and managed to escape, running as fast as she could, eventually flagging down the car for help. Just before midnight, Evansville police started gathering outside the house on Stinson Avenue. The events that had transpired inside up until that point were shocking and terrifying, but no one really had any idea what was going on in that moment. All police knew was what Cynthia had told them. It seemed there was a woman being held captive inside and one man was already dead. But how many people were involved and/or lived there and what actually was happening remained unclear. Body cam footage from outside the house picked up everything happening minute by minute. Before long, a man hurried out with his hands above his head. He told police his name was Jason and this was his house, but he was completely innocent in whatever it was that was going on. He said there were more people inside, including his 2 children, and he had instructed them to hide upstairs when he saw the flashing lights and heard the police from outside. Officers then spent several more minutes trying to get everyone else out. Another man then came out holding something in his hand that from a distance resembled a gun. Police said he was moving very quickly and seemed aggressive in his manner. He was ignoring their instructions to put whatever was in his hands down. It is unconfirmed what the object actually was, but it was determined that it was not a firearm. Officers said they had to act fast, and when he started moving towards them, holding his hands out in a shooting stance, they fired, killing him instantly. As police moved in towards the house, a woman appeared as well. This woman was 36-year-old Heidi Kathleen Carter, and more body cam footage picked up her being patted down, uncovering the revolver that she had been concealing. She was then placed in handcuffs. Police finally started entering the house. As they moved through the rooms, they found a severely beaten woman tied to a bed and the lifeless body of a man that would turn out to be 50-year-old Timothy Ivy. The woman tied to the bed was Timothy's girlfriend, and she was taken to hospital immediately to treat her terrible injuries. That left police with Heidi Carter. The man who had been shot and killed was her boyfriend, Kerry Hammond, the same man that had tried to stop Cynthia from escaping. He said they were still trying to find out what on earth had happened. And as they approached Jason, who lived at the property, he was able to give some clarification. He said he had been out until about 8 p.m. and got back, not realizing anything was wrong. He said he had gone straight to bed when he came home as he was suffering from kidney stones and was in a lot of pain. He said his family were the same, having not been home long and having not seen anything untoward either. Jason said he and his family were in total shock and the police were satisfied that none of them knew anything or were involved in any way. It was determined that neither Heidi nor Kerry had lived at 1801 Stinson Avenue. Jason said he had invited Heidi into his home as she was living in a motel and needed somewhere to stay. Kerry would come over a lot and the pair were constantly fighting. Jason said he had asked her not to have anyone over because of his children and the issues with Kerry. "I was only trying to help an individual out," he told the police. With their main suspect, Kerry Hammond, now dead, it was down to Heidi to talk. And after she was in custody, she went through what she said had happened. In her interview, she was frantic, agitated, and emotionally all over the place. 1 minute crying, the next falling asleep when the detective left the room. She said that earlier in the day, she had started talking to the female victim on a dating app. They arranged for both her and Timothy to come over to the house. Once there, they all drank and took drugs before having consensual sex. At some point that afternoon, Kerry had come to the house and found the three together. According to Heidi and the other woman, he completely lost it grabbed a baseball bat and started beating Timothy with it. The female victim, who has not been named, told police that she and Timothy were both restrained by Carrie and Heidi, and duct tape was put over their mouths as well. A tirade of physical and sexual abuse ensued over the next few hours. Timothy's girlfriend said that Carrie had raped her repeatedly and that Heidi was holding a gun to her while she was being attacked, encouraging Carrie to do it. She said that Heidi told the couple that she knew people that could help them dispose of the bodies and she didn't care if they died. With Timothy still trying to break free and escape, Carrie eventually strangled him to death with his belt, before both he and Heidi moved his body into another room and tried to conceal it. Heidi, however, was adamant that she never held the gun inside the house and only had it on her after she walked out the front door before she was arrested, something which Timothy's girlfriend and Cynthia said wasn't true. Heidi claims she only acted like she was restraining the couple, but didn't actually do anything. "There are a lot of things I should have done different," she said, adding that she had inadvertently helped Carrie by not stopping him. She also admitted to the interviewing officer that she had told the pair she would be able to get rid of their bodies if they died, but she was still maintaining she was just going along with Carrie for her own safety. Given what both she and the female victim were saying to the detectives, Heidi's story just wasn't making sense. Heidi had even left the house temporarily, and instead of running for help, she came back and carried on with Carrie. Police said that both she and Carrie had long rap sheets with past arrests including battery, breaking and entering, giving false police statements, theft, disorderly conduct, and criminal mischief. In 2022, Heidi's trial began, and at the recommendation of her lawyer, she did not testify. The jury watched hours of video, including the entire interrogation of Heidi after she was taken into custody. That video alone was over 2 hours long. In court, Heidi sat looking at the floor the whole time. Timothy's girlfriend also gave her testimony as well. After just 2 days, in November 2022, the state of Indiana rested its case. In December, after 12 hours of deliberations, Heidi Carter was found guilty of just one of the charges, which was possession of a handgun without a permit. The jury couldn't make a decision on her other charges, and the judge declared a mistrial. Heidi Carter is now scheduled to go back on trial in February of 2023. The reality is, it is hard to know the full extent of what happened inside the house on Stinson Avenue back in October 2021. We will continue to follow this case and bring you updates with it, as and when they happen. Born in the heart of Hong Kong on May 22, 1955, Lam Kor Wan experienced a complicated upbringing. His father, Lam Wailak, navigated a challenging life with 2 mistresses, a legal wife, and a total of 10 children. This created the backdrop for Lam's tumultuous childhood. Lam's early years were marked by harsh treatment. When he and his biological mother lived in Malaysia, they both suffered violent domestic abuse from his father. His parents separated when Lam was a child, but this didn't ease the situation either. His father's temper was ferocious, related to a horrifying incident which left 2-year-old Lam unconscious with periorbital bruising and a skull fracture when his father slammed his head against a wall. After a stint in Brunei from 1957 to 1962, where Lam lived in the company's dormitory alongside his father's mistresses and half-siblings, he returned to Hong Kong. Despite excelling academically in primary school, the shift to junior high school in 1968 at Ritchie Middle School in Sham Shui brought challenges. Having juggled dual shifts in schooling due to his father's job had impacted Lam's performance, especially in mathematics. By 1970, the demands of overseeing his father's motorcycle shop after school resulted in a downturn in Lam's academic standing. His connection with his father further crumbled, and this was characterized by severe treatment. This also prompted Lam to frequently escape from home. It had become a pattern in his life that persisted until his middle school years. After finishing secondary school, Lam had officially started working in his dad's motorcycle shop. Later, he moved on to learn air conditioning servicing through a relative. This whole experience, filled with family problems and tough times, had set the stage for the mysterious person Lam Seor Wan would eventually become. In early 1973, he had been kicked out of his home following an argument with his father. Near a public toilet on Hakuin Street in Hung Home, He used a knife to coerce a woman into the restroom, where he inappropriately touched her lower body. This incident led to his arrest. Upon examination, a doctor diagnosed Lam with mental issues, deeming him unfit for trial or imprisonment. Consequently, he was sentenced to treatment at King Shan Mental Hospital. After 102 days of treatment, he was discharged from the hospital and opted to change his name to Lam Jiaokon. By the age of 19, his family noticed his peculiar fascination with the female body, along with his collection of locked-away pornography stored in a metal ammunition box. His family did try to help him, but despite their efforts, nothing seemed to make a difference. When these actions failed to satisfy him, his behavior took a more disturbing turn. He purchased a Polaroid camera and began taking illicit pictures of women from under toilet cubicle doors, prompting the women to chase him down the street. Later, he had been caught peeking at his sister while she was undressed outside the bathroom at their Guangdong residence. Following this, the family made a decision to relocate to another place in Takuan. At their new home, he and his younger brother shared a room, dividing the space by sleeping in separate compartments of a bunk bed. An agreement was in place. Their belongings were to be kept distinct with no interference from the other side. By 1978, he had obtained a taxi license and adopted the name Lam Corwin upon officially starting his career as a taxi driver. Around 1980, he had been shifted to the night schedule, causing his family to only see him every 14 to 15 days. Then in 1981, a sudden interest in photography sparked within him, prompting him to delve into the study of this art form. However, lacking a dark room at home for printing color photos, he sought out a photo studio. To evade suspicion, he joined a photography class hosted by the Chinese YMCA of Hong Kong at the Waterloo Road Association. One of his fellow students worked in a Tim Shasway photo shop. Lam concocted a story claiming to work in a mortuary and, as a part-time photographer, needed assistance with autopsy images. Remarkably, his story was accepted and the fellow student developed Lam's photos to avoid causing alarm among colleagues. After a year of working as a night taxi driver, his mother noticed a drastic change in his behavior. He started neglecting personal hygiene, refusing to change clothes or shower. His demeanor became forlorn, and his mother even witnessed him wandering home like a sleepwalker in the dead of night. On a gloomy night of February 3, 1982, at the age of 27, Lam transformed into something more sinister than a mere peeping Tom. During his stint as a taxi driver in the Tsim Sha Tsui district, one day he was seeking customers who were returning home after a night out, and here is where things took a dark turn. At around 4 a.m., a visibly intoxicated woman named Chan Fenglan came out from a restaurant, and she desperately needed a ride. Looking at the state she was in, many taxi drivers turned her down. Despite seeing this, Lam, seemingly unaffected, welcomed her into his taxi and agreed to take her home. Midway through the journey, the drunk woman requested a stop, and as Lam braked near a gas station, she opened the door to vomit. After this unsettling episode, she asked Lam to go back in the opposite direction, unsure of her location. Lam later confessed that he had hesitated to kill her initially, repulsed by her vomiting. But something within him snapped, and he decided he had had enough. He entered a garage, still in the Tsim Sha Tsui district, walked around to the passenger door, and used an electric cable to strangle the young woman. At 5 a.m., the time he normally finished his work, he drove to his house and parked as usual in front of the building. The street was deserted, so he hid the corpse in a large bag and carried it across the pavement into his apartment building. The night watchman slept on a cot in the entrance hall and did not wake up when Lam passed. He entered the apartment as silently as possible and hid the body under the sofa. For several hours, Lam pretended to be asleep in his bed, waiting for his family to leave after breakfast. Once his parents and brother left the apartment, he woke up and started to get his room ready. Lam took 500 yuan from the victim's wallet and used that to buy a power saw from the street. He covered the floor with plastic to make sure that even the baseboards were well protected. He laid the body of the innocent woman on the plastic and started to dismember it. He was very careful to not leave any trace of blood behind, but that was an impossible task, and some of it splashed on the walls. Hours passed as he was still dismembering the body of the victim, during which he took photographs and videos of the whole process, after which he named the videotape Serious Secret. He cut her body into 7 pieces, wrapped the head, limbs and torso with paper, and sealed it in a plastic bag. The most disturbing part was that he put the private parts into a Tupperware container with rice wine for preservation. He methodically cleaned the crime scene, rolled up the plastic sheet, and scrubbed the floor and walls, leaving no trace of the horror that had unfolded. Making several trips to transport the body parts to his taxi, he remained unnoticed by passers-by. Satisfied that he'd erased any evidence of the disturbing act, he drove to the new territories. He was determined to find a secluded place to dump the body, and stopped when he found a deserted spot on the banks of the Xinguan River near Shaten. Making sure no one saw him, he took the packages out of his trunk, one after the other, and threw them into the river. The muddy waters carried the bundles to the sea. The limbs were washed down by the heavy rain and floated from Lucky Plaza to the Bel Air Gardens area. More than a week after the heinous act, Lam had heard a chilling revelation on the radio. A limb had been discovered on the bank of the Xingmen River. Subsequent days brought the unsettling discoveries of more body parts, leaving the police to reconstruct the tragic puzzle. Investigators used tidal patterns to estimate the approximate time the body was disposed into the river. Notably, one of the arms bore a rare tattoo, a heart with a knife through it, an unusual marking for women at the time. This is what led them to identifying the victim. It was 21-year-old Chan Fenglan. Despite launching a public appeal for witnesses, the police faced unfortunate challenges. The taxi driver didn't come forward, and Chan Fenglan's friends hadn't noticed the license plate. It took more than a week for Lam to hear about the discovery of the body parts. The police had identified the body as that of Chan Fenglan, a mother of 2 and a nightclub hostess in Sim Sha Sui. The grim details revealed Chan's night out with her sister and friends, her taxi rides home, and the tragic fate she met at the hands of Lam Soerwan. Lam Soerwan's first murder had been opportunistic, but the next one was meticulously planned. He, being a perfectionist, was resolute in being better prepared. He aimed for surgical precision, hence he opted for professional equipment instead of a power saw. He had extensively studied knives, blades, and scissors, and ultimately purchasing specialized surgical instruments along with several bottles of formaldehyde. Formaldehyde was a strong-smelling, colorless chemical used for preserving and disinfecting. On May 29, 1982, 3 days after purchasing his equipment, Lamid claimed another victim. His second target, also a bar worker, fell prey to him. This time he calmly chose Chan Wan Kit and strangled her with an electric cable before taking her home. As before, he waited in bed for his family to leave work and then commenced the gruesome task of dismembering the body. Lam had spent days contemplating his actions and meticulously prepared the room according to his plan. He had placed a large tray under the body to prevent blood from staining the floor, and then he had retrieved his video camera. Upon later inspection of the video, investigators discovered that he had placed the tray under the family's parakeet cage. While carefully cutting up the body, Lam showed great skill. When he finished chopping it into pieces, Lam took pictures of the body parts once again. As he thought a lot about a safe place to get rid of the body, he finally found the perfect spot after many nighttime trips. This time he put the body parts in a big plastic bag and placed it in his taxi's trunk. Early in the morning, he drove through the tunnel to Hong Kong Island. The chosen place, Tai Hang Road, a densely wooded residential area, was a 20-minute drive east of the city center. After he parked in hidden part of the street, he started having trouble carrying the heavy bag out of the trunk. He carried it a short way up to the railing and threw the body over it while he watched it roll down the slope into a muddy ravine. In the days that followed, Lam had constantly reflected on the events of that night, not because he had felt guilty or remorseful, but because he had wanted to improve himself. 2 weeks later, he had struck again. On June 17, 1982, Ling Sawan, a 29-year-old nightclub cleaner, had finished her shift at 4 a.m. and held a taxi driven by Lam. Shortly after, she met her tragic fate. Lam brought her lifeless body back to his residence. where he indulged in a chilling series of actions. He documented his horrific acts, capturing them on both photographs and video, titling the recording Operation Rainy Night. Using the selfie function on his camcorder positioned on the bunk bed, Lamb filmed the dismemberment process, displaying an unsettling level of detail compared to his previous action. This time, he went as far as cutting open the abdomen, extracting the intestine and even attempting to taste human flesh, albeit abandoning the attempt due to its nauseating effect. He then left the severed limbs in a burlap bag on Tai Hang Road, marking yet another horrifying chapter in this grim spree. With each crime, Lamb had become more daring. He had spent his time carefully preparing his next crime. Being familiar with the bars and Tsim Sha Tsui neighborhood, he knew the places where women often waited alone for his taxi. His first 3 victims had been what he had called bad girls, but he had wanted the next victim to be a woman of a higher social class. Deliberately, he opted to choose a young woman who appeared innocent, and this time it was 17-year-old Ling Wai-sum. Lamb had found her outside the hotel in Tsim Sha Tsui on July 2, 1982. She had attended a party at her high school before the final exams, but had decided to leave after dinner. Her friends from high school had put her in a taxi to ensure she would get home safely. Lamb led her to a secluded road and parked his car. The teenager was terrified when he grabbed her wrist and handcuffed her to the front seat. It was only 9:30 p.m., which was too early for him to return home. But that wasn't the only reason he wanted to keep her in his taxi. He surprisingly wanted company. He wanted to talk to her. Without any friends and desperate for a companion, he kept Ling tied up for hours, asking questions about her family, religion, and life in general. Lamb was generally enjoying her company. That wasn't enough to hinder his macabre plan. The teenager fell asleep at around 4 a.m. This is when Lamb started to strangle her with the electric cable. After this, he took the lifeless body of the innocent girl home and waited as usual for his family to leave the apartment. Once no one was at home, he attached his video camera to a high shelf to record. This was the video that would end up being later shown in court by the police. The video was more than disturbing. In the video, Lamb was engaging in inappropriate acts with the dead body, an act of necrophilia. Something important to be noted was that when he was earlier setting up the lighting equipment to film his activities, a lamp had fallen on the young victim's thighs and had burnt her skin. He also took pictures of her and videotaped it to subsequently name it as Fourth Operation. Then he cut the body into pieces as he had done with the previous victims, which would later come back to haunt him. Later, he abandoned the corpse on Tai Hang Road. On August 10, 1982, Lamb sought to enlarge the dismembered photo of his 4th victim. Coincidentally, the enlarger at his friend's photo shop was faulty, so Lamb's friend transferred Lamb's negatives to the Meng Kok branch for magnification. During the manual enlargement process, the branch's photo editors noticed unsettling details in the developed photos, indicating a potential connection to a human body's dismemberment. Suspicious as he was, the shop's supervisor alerted the police due to features like a burn mark on the victim's thigh and a picture of a severed breast. Upon receiving the report, the police assigned the case to the Kowloon Regional Homicide Squad. Sergeant Lee Kwon led detectives to gather statements from the clerks at the Tsim Sha Tsui and Meng Kok branches, securing the photos and negatives. The forensic officer from the Scientific Forensics Department conducted detailed examinations. Analysis of the flesh and blood color inferred that the photographed corpse had been deceased for less than 3 hours. The manner of dismemberment suggested that the perpetrator lacked medical anatomical knowledge, eliminating the possibility of them being teaching pictures. Notably absent was the usual green sheet used in autopsies. Forensic experts also confirmed that the photos were not printed matter, but direct photographs from a real corpse. Additionally, a small water droplet captured in one photo reflected half the face of a girl resembling Ling Wai-sum, who had vanished on July 2nd. Based on the findings of the medical examiner and scientific forensics division, the police concluded that Ling had been murdered and decided to proceed with an arrest. On the morning of August 17th, Sergeant Lee had led the team in an ambush at the photo shop. He instructed the clerk to mix several other photos in with Lamb's set of 13 photos and urged him to engage Lamb in discussions about the photos, their locations, and the purpose of the enlargement. The aim was to record the conversation and gather evidence. Around 6 o'clock in the evening, Lamb arrived by taxi to collect the photos. He meticulously inspected each photo as requested by his friend and explained that the enlarged photos would be used for courtroom presentations, particularly for jurors to view the contents more clearly. Lamb claimed he frequently worked in different mortuaries. After confirming the photos and settling the payment, Sergeant Lee disclosed his identity and promptly arrested Lamb. Initially, Lamb concocted a fabricated story, attributing the photos to a supposed four-eyed guy from the Oriental Daily, whom he had planned to meet in Kwa Wan. However, investigations revealed that no such person existed. Consequently, the authorities swiftly applied for a warrant to search Lamb's residence within the 48-hour legal time frame to obtain physical evidence. Otherwise, they would have been required to release him. During the search, they discovered severed body parts, including breasts and vaginas belonging to the deceased women, personal items, preservatives, anatomy books, and surgical tools in Lamb's cupboards. The police also seized and searched his taxi, leaving a note on the windshield that indicated its involvement in a crime and said that it was not to be towed. Further examination of the vehicle revealed evidence such as handcuffs and wire in the glove compartment, along with 2 holes in the back of the front seat, likely caused by one of the deceased women's high heels during a struggle. Reportedly, investigators retrieved an extensive collection, including 696 negatives, 1,500 color slides, and 1,900 meticulously coded photographs documenting Corwin's victims across various stages of his crimes. His meticulous record-keeping significantly aided the police investigation. Ultimately, authorities successfully located the body parts belonging to all of his victims, enabling their identification and subsequent return to their respective families. Lam Seorwan, alongside his younger brother and father, were brought to the police station to aid the investigation. Given the cramped living space and the volume of evidence discovered in the bedroom shared by Lam and his brother, authorities suspected that the taxi driver hadn't acted alone. Lin was released after 3 days of intensive questioning and custody. The younger Lam maintained that due to their different schedules, he rarely encountered his brother and had no involvement or knowledge of the incidents. To hasten their release, their father and younger brother urged Corwin to clarify that they were not involved. In an attempt to persuade her son to confess, Lam's mother also visited the police station. Corwin cooperated with authorities in locating the victims' body parts. However, despite their cooperation, the police still believed that the younger Lam might have been implicated. Consequently, both brothers were charged with 4 counts of murder and presented at Sampokong Magistrates' Courts. They were later transferred to the Su Lam Psychiatric Center for assessment. Supporting the younger brother's consistent denial of involvement, he was eventually released due to insufficient evidence after the 6th hearing. Meanwhile, a medical evaluation confirmed that Corwin was of sound mind, exhibiting a remarkably high IQ, reportedly over 130, and was deemed fit to stand trial. With prima facie evidence established, the case was referred to the Supreme Court for trial. The trial started on March 3, 1983, and many people gathered outside the court to see how Lam would behave. Authorities stated the case's details were too distressing for women. Hence, 7 male jurors were carefully selected to ensure a fair trial. To prevent shock, only the lawyers, judges, and jurors were allowed to view Lam's videotapes. Additionally, the victims' organs were kept out of the courtroom. Throughout the trial, the prosecution presented police office, Photoshop staff, forensic and scientific experts, and even Lam's family as witnesses. Realizing the weight of the evidence against him, Lam sought a deal, admitting to manslaughter in exchange for a reduced sentence. However, this plea was rejected. The judge directed the jury not to debate Lam's guilt, but to decide between murder or manslaughter charges. The trial delved into debates over Lam's mental state, involving testimonies from 5 psychiatrists. 3 suggested an obsession with women, while 2 questioned his self-control. After 18 days, on April 8th of the same year, the judge instructed the jury to deliver a verdict, based on whether they believed Lam had control over his actions during the crimes. After over 3 hours of deliberation, the jury unanimously found Lam sane, driven by abnormal desires and guilty of murder. Initially sentenced to death by hanging, Lam's punishment was commuted to life imprisonment after Hong Kong abolished capital punishment in 1984, courtesy of the governor's pardon. After his conviction, was sent to Stanley Prison and later transferred to Shek Pik Prison, where inmates referred to him as Lam. He maintained a quiet demeanor, avoiding discussions about his past and preferring solitude. Reports indicated that he earned a small salary, remained reserved, and didn't engage much with others. He spent time reading newspaper, medical, and religious texts, and participated in Catholic and Christian classes within the prison. Although he received occasional visits from church volunteers, he had no family visits. His cell was filled with newspapers and books, and he developed a reputation among inmates for his knowledge of purple star astrology, a form of Chinese fortune-telling. Even prison officers sought his advice. In 2018, at 62 years old and having served more than 34 years, Lam applied for parole, which sparked public concern. Despite the parole board's periodic review every 5 years, concerns about the potential for repeated offenses led them to decide against changes or parole at that time. Reports also suggested that Lam was seen by some prisoners dissecting cockroaches in prison and creating intricate displays out of them as stored in a matchbox. During the 1983 trial, Lam's mother testified about the abuse her eldest son endured as a child, detailing how Corwin's father had been physically violent, even causing severe head trauma when the boy was just 2 years old, resulting in 2 black eyes. She herself had also experienced abuse within the family. Experts have linked severe childhood head injuries with later psychological issues, such as necrophilia. It was reported that Lam mentioned to a psychiatrist that he believed he received instructions from God to commit the killings. Throughout the investigation, Lam's actions remained shrouded in mystery. His choice of a Kodak shop for developing films, despite owning the necessary equipment, left investigators puzzled. Some speculated that he might have subconsciously desired arrest, having nearly faced it before. The autopsy's grim findings, coupled with the way the bodies were dismembered, raised suspicions of a professional killer at work. Yet amidst these chilling details, Lam's family faced challenges due to the case's attention. They attempted to sell their apartment, but struggled due to its notoriety, leaving them with no option but to continue residing there. Following the case's conclusion, the police, wary of potential media exploitation, destroyed all tapes and photos captured by Lam. However, some of the victims' organs found a different fate. They're housed at the Wan Chai Forensic Medicine Headquarters for educational purposes. On November 16, 1986, Lam's father sought a form of redemption for his son's sins by dedicating a memorial tablet at Yuanjing College, a somber acknowledgement of the lives lost to his son's malevolence. As our journey through Lam Cor Wan's haunting saga draws to a close, it's crucial to honor the memory of these 4 innocent women whose lives were tragically taken. Lam Cor Wan's tale is a haunting reminder of the complexities within the human mind and the tragic consequences they can lead to. Such stories serve as a stark call for deeper understanding, awareness, and a spotlight on mental health. Lam Cor Wan, now 68, serves a life sentence in the maximum security Shek Pik prison on Lantau Island for the grisly murders that shook Hong Kong in the early 1980s. His name was etched into history as the city's first serial killer. His reign of terror finally halted on that fateful day of his arrest, August 17, 1982, when he was just 27. His disturbing post-crime rituals, hiding victims beneath the family couch, preserving body parts in jars earned him chilling names as the Jars Murderer and the Rainy Night Butcher. Such disturbing actions paint a chilling portrait of a disturbed mind. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.